Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. 6:01. All board members are present. First up is review and approval of the June 11th public meeting minutes.
Motion to approve the June 11th public meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor of the motion as presented, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, I'm abstaining. The next meeting is July 9th at Belmont Middle School. I will not be there. I'll be in Alaska. So, are you here? All right, first up is public communication and correspondence. A couple of things. As always, it's an opportunity, public comment is an opportunity to hear from the public during the school board meeting. We'll take all comments or questions under advisement, but as I typically say, we generally don't respond during this public comment period. We ask that you limit your comments to 2 to 3 minutes. State your name and town for the minutes, and spell your last name for the minutes. And we have 30 minutes allotted for this, and then at the end of the meeting, we have 15 minutes. So, and yeah. So I'll open it up for public comment.
All right, nervous Nikki over here.
Okay.
Hey. All right, hold on. Let's breathe. Nicole Sturgeon, Belmont. Okay. All right. At the last policy meeting, it was stated, we are doing what we need to be doing to meet the kids where they are, and we're not meeting the parents where they are. This is not about us. We don't understand the grading policy, but what we do understand are our children. We see and hear the frustration, stress, and anxiety of our children, and we are their voice. This poster right here is one of few that were put up on lockers last year, and it says you can change a mascot. If you can change a mascot, you can change a grading system. It was shared across social media by the student body in agreement. The thing is, most of these students, they don't know any different. They only know this grading system, and they know it is objective, unfair, and difficult to understand. When their habit of work grade, which does not count towards their GPA, is higher than their course grade and they are having a difficult time passing, this makes them feel like they should not even bother. All of the habits of work scores my children have received are higher than their core scores. This shows me that they are putting in all their effort, but clearly not able to pass assessments. And then lastly, when it comes time to look at the high school schedule, I would like you to question why was the morning break removed? Then ask yourselves, how would you feel if you had to sit for hours at a time, only to get up for a quick 5 minutes to sit yet again? Then think about when you were in high school and how your learning experience would be. That's it.
Thank you. Other comments?
Kate Archer, Canterbury. So my comments are not subject. Sorry.
Is it Kaya?
Archer, A-N-C-H-E-R. My concern is more about the administration and our teacher turnover. We've had three teachers leaving this year, and my concern is, do we know why those teachers are leaving? Has anybody talked to them? It seems as though it seems to be a common factor. The last 3 years, we've had 2 or 3 teachers leaving every year. We've had 3 music teachers in 4 years. Same with art teachers. Why can't we keep teachers? And does it have something to do with some of the new administration?
Thank you. Other comments? Yeah.
Josh Hills, last name H-I-L-S, 1 L, Canterbury. I'm going to give it to you in 3 different hats. First hat as a parent. For 5 years, as a parent, I have struggled to understand the most ambiguous grading system I have ever seen in my second hat, 27 years of being an educator in the state of New Hampshire, with 20 of those years holding a New Hampshire certification for administration. It is the most backwards grading system I can possibly imagine trying to implement from an administrative standpoint. The third hat I'm going to put on is that of a spouse of a teacher who tried to understand this grading system this year within this district and could not. There is such a disconnect between the implementation and consistency of implementation across the board for this grading system, even within the same building. When a district level administrator tells a teacher, we're not allowed to average things with this, and literally in the room next door to that teacher, a teacher is averaging, there's a problem. There's a big problem. Then when you get to the high school, the entire high school is averaging, but it's not happening at another school. This is a real problem, not just from the parent hat, not just from the administrator hat, but also the hat of a teacher trying to figure it out as they're working within the district, new to the district. I have another issue with how the grade system is used in terms of allowing kids to participate and be involved in extracurriculars. I have 27 years of coaching in this state. To have a kid who has a 3.16 GPA be told because they got 2.5, they're ineligible to participate and then have to go through the steps to be reinstated because they got one grade that doesn't meet the standard, but their other 5 are all a 3 or higher. Meanwhile, another student who has straight 2.5s across the board, who is literally struggling, is allowed. There's something wrong. There is something wrong with that system. We're not asking to reinvent the wheel. The problem is, it feels like Shaker Regional has done that. They've tried to reinvent the wheel with this grading system. I've tried for 5 years. I was patient. I have met with people in this room trying to figure out that grading system, and there are people in this room who are awesome trying to help me understand it. But it hasn't worked. I've sat back for 5 years. I've tried to let the powers that be do their job and not bring this out. But it's time. I see my son right now in the high school trying to do his best, and he gets one poor grade in one assessment. And he is told, yeah, sorry, you're not eligible to participate in extracurriculars. Meanwhile, his best friend, who literally has the minimum across the board, they're okay. There is something fundamentally wrong with the implementation.
Thank you. Other comments? Yeah.
Hi, I'm a
Amy.
parent. My name's Jennifer Lindsley Shagnon. I'm a parent and I have 2 children in Belmont
Yeah, hold
Middle
on
School.
1 second.
Oh, yep.
What is your last name?
Lindsley Shagnon, hyphenated.
Can you spell it?
Sure. LINDSLEYCHAGNON.
Did you get it? Thank you, sorry.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. My interpretation and my what I've seen over the past 2 years. Again, my 2 kiddos are all different as learners. What I haven't seen consistently implemented is how are we implementing getting a grade of a 2.5 or a 3? For example, with English language arts, I understand there's a writing component, there's a reading component, there's all different components, and I understand with grading, that it's across worksheets, it's across websites, it's across essays, it's across what the student can do in their STAR assessments. But it's difficult to decipher. It just doesn't seem as consistent. What is going to be the difference between achieving a 2.5 or a 3, or a 3 to a 3.5, and how do you get a 4? One of my kiddos hasn't consistently gotten 4s. It's ambiguous from the 2.5 to the 3, and it doesn't seem as consistent with not a lot of, there's measurements, but it's just sort of really ambiguous. Has been how I've interpreted.
Thank you. Thank you, next.
Lisa Tucker for Belmont. So I'm speaking more for my son. I asked him, he's going into his senior year next year. How does he see how the assessments are? And within his group of friends, it's very subjective. He's certainly not an A student, but he does very well in 2 classes. And the one where I know he doesn't always get to school on time. So, it's very subjective for that one teacher to be able to, even though he's doing the same work as someone else, he's like, well, he's not here. And instead of putting it into the habits of work, because he can get the work done in a shorter period of time, he sometimes doesn't get there on time, but it's able to be very subjective because of the way that it's graded. Whereas if it had more standard, it wouldn't matter. If he got his work done in 40 minutes, whereas the class, you're sitting there for an hour and 20 and he's bored. So that's the big thing within his friends, and the fact that they all seem, well, we seemed like we all got the same thing, but everybody's grade's a little different. It varies through child. So.
Vince Martino, Belmont. My stepdaughter is in middle school. Trying to collect my thoughts, but really I think the 2 things that I wanted to bring up was, I think the word's arbitrary. That's what it feels like. People, it's ambiguous. It just seems kind of arbitrary. Some of the grades that, the system, or it just seems a little arbitrary currently how it's described to me by her, and it's causing her a lot of stress. I was actually under the impression that it was a 4.0 grading system. Like I had in college when I was at Plymouth State, we had 4.0. I said, oh, that's cool. You guys are on the 4.0 system already. That makes sense when you go to high school and college. You'll have an idea of what a perfect score is, a 4.0. And that was the other point that I wanted to bring up, was it doesn't seem possible for any of the kids to get a 4. And that's actually something she said to me, was, well, nobody gets a 4. I said, what do you mean it's a 4? I thought a 4.0 was a perfect score. She said, no, it's not. And that's when I started to realize, oh, this isn't a 4.0 grading system. This doesn't even make sense. So it seemed very arbitrary as far as why the numbers were what they were, and very much up to a subjective, opinion from whoever's in charge. The way that it's caused her this much stress is that her future, in her eyes, even though it's middle school, but to a middle schooler, it is their future, and in reality, it really is, because it's setting them up for high school, is in the hands of this arbitrary system that really doesn't make sense, and is completely in the hands of somebody who could make a, pass-fail judgment on you. So what I would like for her is what I would like for any student is a grading system that makes sense. As far as a 4.0 system, if I was in charge, that's what I would implement, is a standard 4.0 grading system. That's what they're on in college. It's what they should be on in high school. I'm actually not sure what they use at the high school now. But I wanted to come here just to say these things and also to learn more about this and be more involved, because I think people not being involved and not paying attention to the kids and what's going on is kind of what's led to maybe where we are now. But either way, I think it's glad that everybody's discussing it, because it's clearly there's an issue and it's affecting the kids big time. So I would hope that maybe a standardized system that makes sense, that's consistent with all the universities across the country, like a 4.0 system where the kids know what a perfect score is, they can achieve it, and they know where they are. I think that makes sense. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm a student with Belmont Card, and Kirakoto, and we're from Belmont.
Hold on, did you get that?
Ella Stephen.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We're from Belmont. We're the class of 2027. We want to talk about the grading system as well, because like we strive to be like the best we can be and like the best students, but it's being affected by the grading system because some teachers like have different beliefs. Like some teachers think that everyone should be able to strive for a 4, and other teachers think that if you get a 4, then you're like perfect and you know everything. So it's like it's easy to get a 4 sometimes, and it's difficult to get a 4 in other classes. And like with the 4 being above and beyond, some teachers don't know when to give them out, and like some teachers do. So it like fluctuates, and it's like difficult when it comes to like your overall GPA. And so like you'll be in an honors class and you'll like finish the semester with a 3.1, but then you'll be in another class and you'll like finish with a 4. And so it changes a lot, and that'll bring your overall like down so far, and it's really frustrating. We experienced this in our honors classes. It drags it down. And like many high school graduates who like excelled in their studies, they didn't get like the recognition they deserved because of some of the grading systems. And with their like low GPAs compared to like other schools, they can't be like accepted into like colleges, or can't be like recognized as much when they should have been, even when they're putting in more or like the same amount of work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other comments?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Tara Crotto,
Okay.
Belmont, and
TARA.
yep. So I have 2 kids in the system. My son just graduated, and he took a fair amount of honors classes, and my daughter is going to be a sophomore. And what I found, that was very odd to me, is that he took a fair amount of honors classes. He graduated a New Hampshire Scholar, did pretty well in science and math, not as well in English classes. But there were other students that did not take honors classes that graduated cum laude, but he wasn't able to achieve that cum laude status because he took harder honors classes, and his GPA wasn't as high because he took more challenging classes. But he didn't get that weighted bump from the honors class that he probably should have been allowed to get as an honors student. And in other districts, they get that bump by taking honors classes that our district doesn't allow. And they don't, achieve these grades also because of the way we do this grading system. It is very subjective. Some teachers say, well, because you're in an honors class, it's going to be harder for you to get these 3.5s. And they don't grade on the scale up to a 4. They'll only grade up to a 3. So you can't even achieve a 4. And they'll tell them that, well, this assignment is only out of a 2.0, so you can only get a 2.0 out of a 2.0. Or you can only get a 3.0 out of a 3.0, so you only get a 2.5, which is only passing in the high school. 2.5 is passing in the high school. So that's problematic to me. And my daughter here is, all of her classes are honors classes, and she's doing quite well, but again, it's subjective. She has some teachers who make it attainable to get a 4.0, but in her English class, one of her English classes, the teacher was like, you can't get a 4.0, it's not gonna happen. So it makes no sense to me how this can be so subjective from class to class to class. It needs to be standardized. You can't have one teacher that says you can't achieve a 4, and then another teacher who says, yes, you are working hard, you're showing me good quality, you're participating, you're getting it in on time, and you're doing good work, you get a 4.0. And in my eyes, if a student is achieving academically, they're passing their work in on time, and they're showing good quality, why can't they achieve a 4.0? It makes no sense, especially, whether they're in honors or not, they should be able to achieve a 4.0. And if they are in an honors class, they should be able to get a weighted grade after that. In honors class, you are in that class because you are achieving a higher standard in an honors class. If I'm wrong about that, please somebody educate me.
I actually have the same question. I was wondering if we could get an explanation as far as, do we have weighting on honors classes?
Very minimal compared to other districts. It's like a 0.05, right?
Correct. My understanding is the weighting has changed. Will change.
We did have a weighting, and then it went away,
Right.
and now I'm hearing it's coming back.
So right now, there's a small weight, and my understanding from Mr. Tercey, but also from some research that I've done, is that the weighting is higher next year. The proposal for the weighting is higher next year.
So one of the questions we've had as far as like the Honor Society, it's already a 3.5 or above is the GPA required. So is the GPA actually calculated based on a 4.0 system, or is this GPA arbitrarily derived from this 2.53 system? And if it is, that's apples and oranges. That makes no sense, because especially when the rest of the country, the standard is 3.0. So that's one of the things that we've been stressed about. So as an NJHS student, she's already held to a higher standard. And if she's being arbitrarily kept down in these ways with these 2.5s and these, this inability to attain a 4 when she easily could, if that was an achievable standard, then that's completely wrong. And I don't know why that's happening, if that indeed is what's happening.
So I'm gonna redirect it back to public comment, because so if we want to schedule as a board a question and answer period about the grading system, I'm happy to look at that, but I want to make sure we, so that just so you know,
Okay.
I understand you have
Yeah.
questions, and I appreciate that. It's always hard for me not to engage.
That's just part of my comment.
But thank you,
Yeah.
that's,
Okay.
thanks. Other questions, comments?
Okay, just piggyback on what, I'm sorry.
Tara.
To what Tara had said. If the district is going to establish this, a 4.0 is the highest, then every assignment has to be across the board measured on that standard of a 1 to a 4.
Yeah.
For when my kids come home and I see, 13 out of 13, awesome.
4.0.
A 3. 3 out of 3. Wait a minute, but you got everything right. And the comments are terrific, and great, teacher comments, great insight, but you got a 3. But everything was right. How is that? And that is at the core of the problem. And then a week later, my daughter brings home another assignment, 11 out of 13, and that's a 3. Well, how? How in the world? I mean, it is mind-numbing. And I cannot stress this enough. I have a master's degree in academics, and I cannot wrap my head around the logic of this as a professional educator, of how this system is still being used and implemented in the manner that it is, because it is totally nonsensical. And it is punishing the kids when they're trying to do their work the best they can. You get and to piggyback on the habits of work, you get a habits of work that's a 3 or a 3.5, and the grade in the class is a 2.5. How?
Or the opposite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How?
Because it's completely arbitrary.
So all the comments need to be directed to the board.
Yes.
So there shouldn't be comments to each other. Thank you. Other comments?
Kira Crotto, Belmont. So next year I'll be an incoming sophomore, and just a few more things. It's kind of what's already been said, but from my perspective, if I'm getting a 3.0 in a class, which is passing, that's 100% of my work. That would, maybe not in 100% in some teachers' eyes, but a 3.0 equals out to a 3.0 GPA. But if a 3.0 is 100%, then why is that a 3.0 GPA? And as well as the fact that some teachers, you complete the full assignment, you can get a 4, and some teachers you have to actually do an extra assignment for this 4, since it's, I think it's like outstanding and above or whatever, the proficiency scale. It's completely not standardized by numbers whatsoever. So all the teachers interpret it differently. Like my mom said, it's completely subjective. And it's really frustrating, especially when it comes to GPA, because in classes where teachers say, this is an honors class, a 4 is not attainable, because that would be like a 4.5 in a regular class. So you can't get that. And then they say they grade on a curve because of the weight, but the weight isn't really enough to actually make it so your GPA is higher since you're in an honors class. It actually drags it down. And now some people have lower GPAs than people who are in not honors classes. So that's frustrating.
Thank you. Other comments? Making sure I'm not missing. Okay. There is another public comment at the end, towards the end of the meeting as well. All right, so our main agenda item for tonight is policy IKA, the grading system. Alice, do you want to share?
Yeah, I can kind of talk about what I put in the packet here. So I know that this is a lot of pages. Essentially what I did was I looked at a lot of different districts within southern and central New Hampshire, and I went through, I looked at their IKA, whether or not they had an IKA, what IKA they were using, whether they developed their own, whether they used the New Hampshire School Boards Association IKA. One of the things that I found that was really interesting is that most districts actually use the New Hampshire School Boards Association IKA, and they spell out the different grading systems within their parent-student handbooks. I thought that that was very interesting. There were a few noted exceptions to that who actually did develop their own IKAs. They're very large districts. It's Manchester and Salem. They're the only other ones that completely developed their own system. Raymond has sort of like a hybrid version. They do use the New Hampshire School Boards Association language. However, it has some blurbs in there that are that were interesting to me, so I wanted to include them for people to take a look at. And I also found that there are a lot of districts or SAUs in our area that do use the New Hampshire School Boards Association IKA. Merrimack Valley uses New Hampshire School Boards Association IKA. Bedford, Kearsarge, Bow-Dunbarton, they all use the New Hampshire School Boards Association IKA. And then what was also further interesting to me is that there are some that don't have an IKA. They simply don't. They just add the grading into their student parent handbooks. So Laconia does that, Henniker does that, Hopkinton does that. There are a number of them that actually just do it that way. So what I did was I actually went through, I read everyone's IKA, I read everyone's student parent handbooks I did not have time to look at the elementary schools. I focused on middle and high school. So what I did was I took out the pertinent pages and kind of made a master list for everybody to just kind of read through and see what other districts are using. So they're absolutely, in doing this process, it became very evident that you can equate it to certain traditional numerical scales. Many systems do this. Many other schools do this. The other thing that I sort of noticed is that in some of them, Raymond actually had a very good, they were able to spell out the summative versus the formative. It's all spelled out very, very well. So essentially what I just wanted to do was kind of put all of this together so that everybody can kind of see it, because I think we've all been looking at our IKA for such a long time that maybe we just need to look at somebody else's, and if it's all out there in front of us, we can sort of see the things that work and see the things that don't. So having said that, I'd like to kind of open the floor for everybody to, maybe talk about something that you saw in here that you liked, that you think that we could probably implement here. So, I don't know, Michelle, Mark, if you have anything else you want to say.
Well, first, I have to compliment you on being a machine when it comes to doing this research. I find it truly amazing.
Thank you.
Agreed, well said, Mark.
So there was things I liked about what each school did. So it is interesting that there are very few that put their grading policy or their grading skills in their policy. And I know that I brought up a few meetings ago about using the School Boards Association and moving things down to the handbooks. And it's interesting because after our last meeting, I got a message from a parent asking why non-educators were making edits to grading policies. And I started to think about, is this why all the other schools do that? Like, who here is qualified to make that change? I know the original draft, I believe, came from the administrators and the teachers, et cetera. So it's been very interesting to kind of consider that in what we have on the table here for this. So I just wanted to raise that first, because that parent made a very valid point. Is that we were given a draft, and as we make edits, do we have the qualifications to make those edits? What I would like to see is us to take the pieces that we like. So one school, they had the weightings in there, shows them out for the AP classes, it shows the others. There was examples of formative or summative work for each of the different schools. They had elementary through high school. And very clearly, they all, if you put pieces together, could line up. And I would like to see us put this back on the teachers and administrators and have them come up with a plan that they all agree to. And say, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for these examples. We're looking for to see these weightings in there. We're looking for this, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in the overall policy, but we need to define this. As I looked through the different areas with the crosswalks, and to Alice's point, like, it is done. But is that gonna solve the problem? A lot of the things that we've heard tonight are about consistency, subjectivity, ambiguity. If you say, you have to do this amount of work to get a 3 or this amount of work to get a 4, does the same problem happen if you have to do this amount of work to get a B or this amount to get an A? The problem, I think, is bigger than just the 1 through 4. So those were my kind of initial thoughts. I really liked what Raymond did. They spelled it out very nicely. I liked the ones that have the weightings, things like that. But at the end of the day, it's about being qualified to make these edits to this policy. So those are just my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, and to answer that question, and we have three people that have gone through formal, education process to be teachers. I was one for 23 years. Jill's currently one. Jeff changed careers, so we have a significant amount of educational experience, within the board. So in many ways, I believe we do. We have the knowledge, to be able to make those types of edits.
And you should agree with that? Think about it, yeah.
Oh, okay. I agree that I have knowledge of educational grading practices. Do I have complete knowledge on the Shaker Regional? I'm learning as we go, because it's not the same as what I have in my district, so.
As far as this district goes, I have no idea. like this grading system. I've never been able, that's why I pulled my kids out. Because I like the 100-point scale, it's easy to understand. And they cry, like, they get a bad grade, like, oh, I didn't do the work. And then they work harder and get a higher grade. You see, gives them an incentive to work harder. And that's what I like. Like this system, you've heard from all of us. They work hard, they get nowhere. So what's the point? They don't have to work as hard because you have these kids who aren't working as hard or taking the high weighted, well, they should be weighted classes, but anyways, they're not doing as much work, but they're getting higher grades for like walking higher in graduation. So it's broken.
I agree.
We have to fix it. And we can't go out to committee for like another year or two. This is something we should get resolved. Am I the best one to make that judgment? No, but I know what I like. And I know what people have talked to in town. This 100-point scale will work for hundreds of years. So I don't know why this is so much better that we switched to. Like, I just think it's causing anxiety for the teachers, the children, and the parents. Probably some administrators, I don't know. But we've got to do something like now. I understand what you're saying. Like, are we qualified to do this? Well, get the community together quick, but we shouldn't wait
And I
for a long time. We need to move.
And that's why I said, the draft policy that was given to us was created by teachers and administrators of the different schools.
Yeah.
So if we are looking for different things within that, I think that we should put it back to them to meet that requirement. So we want to say, we want to see grading, we want to see, examples of formative summary. We want to clearly outline what counts as a grade and what doesn't and the reason why.
For Randy, my conversation with the DOE, when the DOE said that there's no mandate for the 1 through 4, only that a district have a grading policy.
Right.
We've been presented with a proposal to drop what is considered to be passing. Either, I guess it's currently a 2.5. I think the proposal is to drop to a 2. When I talked to the DOE and explained what had been presented to us, the woman that I spoke with was very surprised. Her understanding is that the common understanding is that the bar is 3. A 3 is proficient, not a 2.5, not a 2. I don't feel, if teachers haven't created a path to a 4 after this being in place for how many years? 6? 7? If they haven't done it yet, they're not going to do it. So we have concerns being presented to us that we can't achieve a 4. Short of the directive coming down, from the superintendent's office and then building level administrators where every single teacher will show a path to 4. Well, best practices would be that you've already created that path to a 4. And so I don't believe for 1 second that all the teachers will create that path, even if they're told to do so. Jeff is talking about how this is broken, and I agree. Just recently have people engaged in conversation with me about the anxiety that it causes to students. Where we always talk about what's best for kids, and we try to leave what's best for what's best for parents behind. But I think it's one and the same. Because if you're causing anxiety to your kids, you're indirectly causing anxiety to parents. And if you're causing anxiety to parents, you're indirectly causing it, to the kids. I don't think they're isolated entities. It's not working. We've been told again and again and again from students that it's not working, from parents that it's not working. When I engaged in a conversation with this board, the union took it upon themselves to create a survey, which we got the results from. The overwhelming response was that it's not working. So I struggle. I struggle with lowering the bar. I personally don't feel that should be a building level decision. I think that should be a board decision. I think we should call the shot about what is passing and what earns credit within our district. I feel that that's our job. Lowering the bar doesn't solve the problem. It puts a Band-Aid on it.
So I do want to respond to the whole lowering the bar, because I think there's a difference between what earns credit and what potentially a 3 is. And I'm just saying that because if we went back to the 100-point grading system, what's earning credit? Does it have to be an 80%? Does it have to be, like, I'm just saying, like,
Still in the same boat.
we're still in the same boat, right? So there's, whether it's 1 to 4 or whether it's 100 points, I think, you know, if you look at the state assessment, yes, 3 is proficient. I'm not disagreeing. If you look at some of these, it actually shows partially proficient, as I'm looking at Raymond's. 2.4 to 1.2 is a C plus, D plus, but it's earning credit. So I'm just saying, I think there's a difference between earning credit and proficiency, because I think to think 100% of students are going to get to proficiency, whatever this proficiency is in a 100-point scale or in a 1 to 4, isn't realistic. We know that from No Child Left Behind.
Right.
So that's, I just wanted to say that because I hadn't had a chance, we hadn't had this policy since then.
But to answer your question, in my opinion, is when if you answer X number of questions correctly out of X number of questions that are offered, and you get that percentage, that's a hard number. There's no ambiguity to it. There's no, to use the words that are here, there's no arbitrariness to it. There's no subjectiveness to it. Whereas what's being presented to us in a real world situations is that earning that 3, that 2.5, or the 3.5, it is ambiguous. So that's where I think the difference is.
The only other thing, I'm looking at Raymond currently. And I mean, 100-point scale versus 4-point, they're not the same. So there's that. If you look at that, I mean, if you get a 13 out of 13 on your test, you're still gonna get a 3. Like, I mean, because if that's 100%, you still have to have that opportunity to go above and beyond if you have it. So I'm confused or trying to figure out where that extra comes in, because you have to go above and beyond to get over the 3. It says right in that competency grading, the student is exceeding the grade level competency. Extends. But if you pass a test and you have a perfect score, are you extending your learning, or are you just hitting the mark?
I thought Kearsarge had a mixture, like proficient with distinction. The grading scale is 90 to 100%, so that at least showed. I know we're told, and I get it, fundamentally, that a 1 to 4 cannot translate, but we are seeing that our GPAs, when we are going on to college, they are translating them to compare to somebody on a 4.0 based on a 100-point scale. So they're equating somehow, and I know a number of districts have tried to do a mixture of both. I don't know what that means, I'm just,
Has anyone talked to other districts about this? Like, what if they have similar problems? What if they have a solution to these problems?
I have not.
I've worked within 2 districts that ran both at the same time. So the 100-point scale was for virtually everything except for credit. The 4-point scale was for credit only. And at times it got messy. I can use one of my classes as an example, where one of my competencies was technical reading and writing. So I had a series of assignments that got you to proficiency on the technical reading and writing. There were students that just said, I don't like technical reading and writing, so they wouldn't do any of the assignments. So on that competency, they would not achieve a 3 because they opted not to participate in any of those assignments. But everything else, they hit it out of the park. So on a 100-point scale, they might achieve an 89, a 92, or something along those lines, but they were missing one of the competencies. And if they're missing one of the competencies entirely, then they didn't achieve credit. And so that got messy, because then the questions came in, well, how can I get an 85 or an 89 or a 90 and then not achieve credit? I explained it the best that I could, but that's one of the consequences of running both grading systems at the same time. If you're going to err on one side or the other, I think both at the same time is more effective than just the 1 through 4.
What I have found is that the majority, I don't remember if it's all, but the majority of these schools all run both.
Yeah, so I guess my question, like looking at Raymond, is, partially proficient of a 1.2, 2.4 equates to a C+, B+, something like that. Are those kids getting credit for that, or do they not get credit? Because there's a big difference between, grading versus am I getting credit for class too. There's 2 different schools of thought. I still haven't wrapped my head around that discussion either of, whether you do 100-point grading scale or 4-point grading scale. If we do a 100-point grading scale and I get a 79 and I'm not proficient, do I not get credit for the class? You're still going to have parents showing up complaining whether it's a 100-point grading scale or not.
If you look at Kearsarge, I'm not promoting it, I'm just let them know, which is page 17, they actually show you. So for them, proficient with distinction is, which would be a 4, would be 90 to 100. And then proficient, the indicator of passing, is 75 to 89. And then basic proficient is 65 to 74. And all 3 of those get credit, whereas no credit is 50 to 64 or 40. I have not seen it work. So that's how they equate it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure looking at some of the other schools.
Like
I
what?
don't know how they equate it. Unless I missed it.
And that's a tough pill, to swallow, and I'm sure it's a tough pill for students and parents to swallow. If everybody that gets between a 75 and an 89 gets the same 3, I mean, we've heard it, a whole bunch of times. How do you differentiate between those students? I mean, there was at last night the 8th grade promotion. Very, very well-spoken young man with the speech, and one of his statements that he made, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it, because I thought it completely applies to what we're discussing tonight. Is he said that accomplishment is the driving force in his success, and it immediately rung with me, because if the goal is everybody to get a 3, and in just to use the example that you gave, Michelle, everything from a 75 to an 89 is a 3. Where's the sense of accomplishment?
And I didn't say in this case what was actually reported. So, because I don't know from this, but I don't know if they're reporting out both. So they're saying you have a 70, and that is, they don't even use a 1 to 4, they say basic proficient. So both are there. So there would be differences between if our 2 kids, one of them got a 70, which is a basic proficient, and your daughter got 73, it's a basic proficient, but I believe both would show. So you would see differences. Not, again, I'm not saying I support this, I'm saying it shows both as opposed to straight up 3.
So one of the basic things I thought we were talking about tonight was, are we keeping an IKA policy like what we're currently doing, or are we going to make it more generic or school board association and then putting it in the handbooks? I don't really care either way, but I want to move on.
Correct.
So Sean, you just let me right to it. So I'm going to make a motion that we abandon the 1 through 4 grading system permanently and immediately and revert to the Carnegie 100-point scale as follows, which was historically in Belmont. An A was 93 to 100, a B was 85 to 92, a C was 77 to 84, and a D was 70 to 77.
Second.
Discussion?
So I don't know if that solves the problem. So like, it still has to map to the standards. So are we just gonna be in the same boat, but using a letter grade?
It is. I
That's
believe it
my-
does a lot to solve the problem because you're getting hard numbers. You're using math to calculate out a score of, dare I use the word proficiency, but you're getting a numerical score, not an arbitrary or subjective score.
I mean, when I was a student in school, I got an 80, and I thought that was arbitrary. Like, I don't think you're fixing the problem by just saying we're going to go back to a 100-point grading scale. I understand what your concerns. I definitely get that. But I had teachers who wouldn't give anybody above an 80 grade, and then they curve everybody. So whoever got the 78 to an 80 would get an A. And like, that was screwed up as well. Like, there's no perfect answer to what we're trying to come up with. But I don't know if that. My frustration is I've heard somebody say we should go back to 100. I've heard somebody say we should go to a 50 grading. I heard somebody say, I don't like the weighting of the honors and AP classes. I've heard somebody say, I don't like the fact that somebody can take tests or summatives more than once and get a better grade than my kid who did it one time and pass. I've heard people complain about consistency between this teacher and that teacher, or the same teacher teaching multiple courses. None of that tells me that a 100-point grading scale is going to fix it. What I see is what we have isn't working. We need to fix whatever we have. That's one option.
We've been
We
saying
just
that for a
fix
year.
the crap review.
We've been saying this for a year, and here we are again today.
Well, I do feel like we have made some strides, like we're moving to Alma, correct?
Nobody knows the strides.
I know that, so I'm saying, so part of my frustration is that there's all this, so there's IKA, which is your foundation, for lack of a better way to say it. And then all the things that, so think of a house, right? You have a foundation, which is supposed to be your policy, whatever that basic policy is. And then everything else is in the handbook. And so, for the different schools, we aren't involved in what's going on in the handbook behind the scenes. So I know that they're looking at fixing the weighting of the high school's GPA, which is an issue. I only because I've uncovered some things, or that we're moving to Alma, or and that they're doing some things differently around, from what I've heard, kids are being offered 4s now, and they're working on consistency, but we're not hearing that at the board level. So because we haven't dealt with IKA in its foundation, there's all this building that's happening, and we don't know what that is. So that's my piece. I hear what everybody's saying, and I have a kid who just graduated whose GPA is definitely lower than it probably would be next year because of the different weightings. So and I know that affects merit-based scholarship for Lakes Region and kind of all of that, which is why I was asking about it. So I get that. That's my frustration, is we are looking at IKA and we don't know all the pieces behind the scenes. So regardless of what we do, we're gonna be dealing with handbooks in August with all the things around it. So I don't think I know.
It's been 5 years.
Go ahead.
I just want to speak to this concept that the board hasn't been informed of these things that are going on. So I've said to the board that the high school is working on increasing the weight for 18. I also said, based on my opinion, that the 2.5 per credit to earn credit is doing a disservice to the population of students. So they're working on that. Mr. Finch, in multiple board reports, has given the board information of the professional development that's happening with staff around developing consistency and looking at proficiency scales. So that has been provided to the board. So I just have to jump in and say that the board has been informed along the way with things that we're doing. Presented an action plan, the steps that we've taken in order to address those the things that have been identified in that action plan. So I had to say that the board's been informed of the steps we've taken.
I do agree that I feel abreast of what's happening. I do feel like there's an opportunity with our parents to keep them abreast of what's happening, because I don't think that from a parent point of view, I would know a lot of what was happening at the board level unless I was sitting here. So I don't know what the answer is.
So, I'm sorry, there's a motion and a second on the table. Other discussion?
So my issue with that, with where we stand now, is I don't know what competency looks like in the 100-point scale, and I fear we're just changing the rating. Because from everything we've heard, the issues are much bigger than just 100 point. You know, if you say you place 100 and whatever it looks like on the new one, like, are you going to run into the same issue? And now we're going to be, well, you know, my kid can only get a 70. Or not everyone can earn 100. It's like the issue is bigger than just the 100.
That's my concern.
I agree with that. I think it's more than just picking which way to go. I just need to have to know fundamental things that we need to work out before we change.
I second the motion because, and Mark, we're frustrated, we need to move. Like, we are kicking the can down the road for almost a year now. We have to do something. This is why I second that motion. He's making the motion because we have to do something. We can't sit here and talk about it for another 6 months. Because we have kids who are going into high school as freshmen, they have senior year to graduate, and we have to do something to help their GPAs and parents understand and everything else. And I'm just sick of talking about it. There's tweaking a couple different things. Great. But it's broken. But doing the same thing over and over again, it's like insanity. We tweak a little bit, but we're getting the same results for the kids and the parents and the teachers. That's nuts. We just have to scrap it and go for broke. Fix it. Make it better. I'm just sick of all this talk. Let's do it.
Any other discussion for the motion in a second?
You have to read out the motion.
Greta?
Mark Hedberg made a motion to abandon the current 4-point scale grading system and move to the Carnegie. The Carnegie article is, and move to the Carnegie 100-point scale.
Yes.
Is there another word between Carnegie and the 100-point scale?
Well, no, but there's a little bit of it missing. I made a motion to abandon the current 1 through 4 grading system permanently and immediately and return to the previous Carnegie 100-point scale as follows. 93 to 100 is an A, 85 to 92 is a B, 77 to 84 is a C, 70 to 77 is a B.
Mark read it back to you. Okay, any other discussion? Mark? Go ahead.
If I have a summative of 10 questions and I only get 1 out of 10, I've got a 10% on the summative. That 10% going to get averaged into my overall grade? My grade's going to suck. I have a concern about that. There are a lot of people in this district that feel that one of the downsides of the 100-point grading scale is you've now got 60 points of failure before you even get to a potentially a passing grade or a competent grading. It's not perfect. It's got the same issues.
Right, it's not perfect. However, what exists virtually everywhere in life, from college to trade schools to any type of assessment outside of what appears to be schools here in New England, and we're setting them up. We're setting them up for disaster. We're setting kids up to think that they can go to college and retake assessments and retake tests and retake assessments until they pass, and that's just not the case.
But that has nothing to do with the grading scale. That's a competency-based education discussion. It has nothing to do with a 4.9 scale.
That's my issue, is I don't know what this looks like in the competency world. So are they just allowed to retake it over and over until they get a 70? It's the same.
My kid gets a 71 the first time. That's not fair that kid gets to take it 5 times and get something.
Right.
But I guess that's where, we keep identifying all these issues, and we say, well, that's a larger problem, that's a larger issue, that's a larger problem. But yet, then, Randy, you people are questioning whether or not we have the knowledge or ability, to set or change policy. From what I'm hearing with all the issues that have been left to building level administrators, it sounds like we need to be more involved in making making additional decisions.
I just ask for clarification on the motion, Mark. Is that K to 12?
No, middle school, high school.
You're 5 through 12?
Yeah, middle school, high school. I'd be fine with it, K-12.
You have to go 6 through 12. Because Canterbury has a 5th grade, although it's not next year, but that's only the 1 year thing.
Yeah, and that'd be fine. That would be fine.
So, hold on, for point of order, I believe you are clarifying the motion, i.e. changing the motion. So you can do that, but your second has to agree.
Okay, so to clarify the motion on the table, to be, the motion that I made to be applied to grade 6 through 12.
Second.
Yes.
So with that amended motion, that means that the middle school can have 5th grade teachers will be grading 6th, 7th, 8th grade teachers.
I think,
It's very difficult.
and I'm guessing that's why Mark was saying for middle and high school.
Right, I'm going for that consistency, but because, at the middle school level, 5th grade is contained within, within 5th grade except for specials. So, is it doable? Yes. Is it ideal? No. I'm trying to be, somewhat, flexible with the problem that, that Randy pointed out. I don't see an issue of Canterbury running, running through, through 6th grade. with the one through four, because nothing's credit, anyway at the middle school. So we could, it'd be just as easy to do, 5 through 12 in Belmont, and then, K through 6 here.
So what is your motion? Just trying to get clarity, because I'm just asking,
Right,
are you
so-
doing are you proposing 6 to 12, or are you proposing Belmont Middle School and Belmont High School?
So after having a discussion of what, the potential problem that Randy presented, I'll stick with middle school, high school.
And I believe Jeff agreed.
Yep.
All right, any other discussion?
I would like to point out, we still don't know what this would look like in competency-based role. And without that information, I know I personally, right.
All right.
I just worry that with the 0 to 100 scale, people are thinking traditional grading scales, not competency based. And I like you said, Randy, I don't know what that looks like in the 0 to 100 in competency based.
And I don't know if that fits the issue.
Okay, motion and a second. I'm gonna call the vote. All those in favor of the motion as presented, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Abstain? Motion fails. So back to.
Can I ask a question of the superintendent? If we were to say this proficiency thing, just proficiency-based education, grade education, is not working for us, does the state withhold funding? Like, can we just say, you take the test and you fail, you fail. You just go back to the way we used to teach way back when.
The state's not going to intervene unless we're.
It feels like that is the overarching, for me, the confusion I have between that type of education versus how the heck do you grade?
The state's not going to intervene with our grading practices whatsoever. What they would intervene is if we did not follow the ed rules for minimum school approval, which is a requirement of competency-based education. We have to have competencies. We have to educate based on competencies. That's how we get approved as a public school through the state, is to follow those rules, which are law. Therefore, any notion of not having competency-based education isn't used for discussion. As for grading practices, just as you've done with all of your research, it varies widely across the state. So we have the flexibility to develop whatever we want around grading practices. However, we have to do a competency-based education system.
Which in truth is a little more of how I thought this meeting was going to go. We're going to kind of discuss some of those different practices in the packets and maybe discuss what would work for us. So that was really where I was going with this meeting.
So, can I propose one thing is, we go to a blanket, generic School Boards Association, IKA policy. We put the grading practices in the handbooks for each of the schools. We confirm and share with parents the improvements they're going to see next year, see if that makes any kind of positive difference, or the improvement being whatever we talked about so far. And then, go from there. I mean, I also think, based on some of the examples we've seen of all the districts that have a non-100-point grading scale, a lot of them have, like, there's a Raymond one that had, the point, the ranges of 2.4 to 2.7.
Right, 2.4 and 1.2.
That provides more. I mean, I remember, yes, we talked about if we had a tenth of a point, like, I don't like the fact that we just show 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4. Like, there needs to be more variation. That at least provides variation to me. So I would like to, basically, like somebody said already, take the best parts of all of these, fix ours, and
God.
And what timeframe do you propose that to happen?
You said yesterday.
now.
Well, there's gotta be, for handbooks, there would have to be.
And not just by the time the handbooks come out. Well ahead of the time the handbooks come out.
Right.
But we approve them because we want to get feedback. Because there are definitely things that we've talked about, whether it's waiting, whatever, that I continue to hear parents come up to me and say, this stinks. And it's like, I think we're working on that. We're working on that. Like, I want them to know that it's going to be better. But until we have it in writing or some type of communication, whether it's a high school or middle school communication to parents, or it's a superintendent sharing it to parents, and kids as well, I want that information more widely known.
What's the timeline on handbooks?
They're coming to the board in the second week of July.
So that's earlier than last year.
Because we know, so we're gonna have, we made the change last year, handbooks are gonna have the first and second reading. First reading will be in the second reading in July, second reading in August.
Until the school year starts, you will not hear me once complaining of too many meetings. Like, I will meet weekly, more often if we need to get this settled down. Maybe not perfect, but 90% a lot better. A lot clearer, a lot more fair, a lot more consistent, all which we've heard.
That's what I liked about some of the things in the handbooks. It's very clear.
Yeah. Which is why they were included. So again, I know that Mark and Michelle, I did not include Raymond in the initial, in what I had initially sent you, but in looking at their grading, there are pages and pages and pages about competency standards, how they grade, all of that. I actually really liked how they did it. It is very, very succinct. It is, well, maybe not succinct, but it is, it is very informative, this. I did notice with the weighting that Bedford had a really good way that they were weighting their grades. I thought that was very informative. It was just laid out right there in their handbooks. So honestly, I think that there are some really good things that other districts are doing that we can do to fix what we have.
So one question, I'll ask policy, but that's not a fair question. How do we know the things they're doing are good?
That is a fair question.
And if there's that question of, hey, this might not be this one, maybe this one, bad for this one, I'd be willing, I don't want to ask 15,000 people, but I'd be willing to go around and ask, administrators or whatever, what's the feedback? Have you had people coming to your school board meeting complaining about this or that? To see, what happened. Because I think we all agree we don't want to go down the road that's just going to lead us to the same.
Right. But yeah, that is something that we would.
I just need to be told, Sean, call.
Perfect.
Or whatever. I'll do it.
Perfect.
I need to know because it can't be ambiguous. And vigorous. You have to say, this is what we want to do, what we want to prepare this.
I'm happy to delegate that to you.
Yeah,
Call Mark.
Well, I think what you're saying is he wants a list of who he would need to call.
Well, then I think we need to kind of pick the things that we think might be worth looking into then. That's.
So one of the things I really liked about Raymond is that formative work that a lot of students will elect not to do is factored into their grades. It's weighted in with the summative. It talks about how that it's not optional. You still have to do it. So I liked that that seemed to be a good way to reinforce those work habits and actually apply a grade to them, which I know doesn't happen.
Did you get a chance to look at this one? Have they been shared with you? So Sean, your proposal was, I don't think you can motion.
I don't think it needs a motion, but I feel like the last motion got voted down. We need to move in some direction. I wholeheartedly agree with Jeff that we need to do it now. We need to move and
So
have something concrete and better by the school. Yeah, we need to do something.
I was just going to say, I mean, what are your thoughts on, in the interim, making the decision to add the 100-point scale in conjunction with the 1 through 4?
I would still like to see it, how it maps to. So, what is proficient? Is it a 70? Is it a 60? Does a 4 map to
Well,
a
no,
90?
no, it'd be adding it in conjunction, whereas you'd use the competency, the 1, 2, 3, 4, for credit, because you're showing that you are knowledgeable, and then you'd have the Carnegie-based, for GPA, for senior scholarships, for eligibility, for all of those.
There are schools that do that, I believe Manchester does, and I think Bedford High School does that as well.
Because I sincerely doubt that what you would like to see happen is going to happen before the start of this next school year. It took a year for the policy committee to be proposed minimal changes to what we currently have.
Well, so I want to reframe that as a member of the policy committee because, yes, there aren't much significant changes, but there was a lot of work done to get to that point. So I just want to take exception to that piece of it. I understand we may disagree on that, and that's fine. But my understanding to that point, and from working with the teachers and administrators, there's a lot of work done. And I think the other thing is policy committee has had it for a while too. So whether we should have bumped it to the board earlier, that's a whole other thing. But I think when did we originally get it? April. Yes. Yeah. So that's all, but I understand. I think we do need to do whatever we have to do to put something in place.
So I will reach out to Manchester and I will see how they do the 1 to 100 scale for their high schools, for their competency-based education. And I will see what I can find.
Also ask if it's working, what their feedback is. Do they hear from parents, from teachers, from staff? Because I will say this, whatever we go with, people need to be on board with. Because if our teachers aren't on board with it, it's going to be the same problem. If our parents aren't on board with it, it's going to be the same problem. So I do think, to your point, Michelle, with Q&As, once it's ready, I think that's a very smart idea.
Randy, I'm kind of confused. We've had a student representative here for a year explaining the frustrations and the challenges and how I believe she used the majority of the students that she interviewed and spoke with weren't satisfied with the 1 through 4. We've had a ton of feedback from the parents wanting to revert back We've had some pretty significant feedback from teachers wanting to revert back. So we have a system, for all intents and purposes, that is ready for buy.
So I want to reframe because the student representative did not say they wanted to leave the 1 to 4. She
Wow.
presented the significant challenges that were on the 1 to 4. So I just think we have to be clear what.
It wasn't working. I think is what she said multiple times.
She said there were significant challenges and she listed them all for us to address. And I think that I have heard from parents who aren't comfortable, for what this is worth, coming to speak publicly to us that they like the 1 to 4 scale.
I've had some come to me as well.
So I'm bringing that forward because, I mean, it's even hard for us, well, I'll speak for me. It's hard for me to sit up here as I'm trying to figure out, like, how do we blend this? How do we do this? I know there's significant issues. I've had 2 kids go through high school experiencing some of those, but at the same time, trying to figure all of that out. And there's a lot of public pressure. But, so I'm just saying, so I can understand when I say to a parent, well, you can submit something to us. But it has to get attached to the minutes, which means that it's public. And I get that, we should be fully public, but there's another piece to it. And I want to hear from families and have questions and answers about that. So that's, for what that's worth, I have gotten a few parents who have expressed that. And I believe Randy.
I have too. I've also heard from students that have told me that the only issues that they have are the amount of retries that people are allowed, that they don't think it's fair. Other than that, they understand it. And I've also heard from students that are frustrated with it and don't.
Very much.
So when I hear a lot of things, like I said, what we rate this as doesn't appear to be an issue. It's about being consistent. And what does that look like? We need to be across the board, and we need to have, our own standards for grading and how it's done and when it's done and what constitutes it. And for ineligibility, it needs to be fair and it needs to be consistent.
So, Sean, what does your proposal look like moving forward? Are we meeting weekly, or are we?
I mean, I want to be as done as possible with this topic by the time we approve the handbooks and we're already in the middle of June. I mean, don't we all agree we can't go through a school year with saying?
Well, I agree. I mean, based on the vote, I feel that this can has been kicked down the road for another year.
Well, I disagree.
That's too much.
I would like it to not be, but my gut is telling me that it is.
So I'm going to suggest a timeline. So first meeting in July, you have a draft policy for first reading, adopt the School Board Association general policy. So get the policy off the table.
Because we have to have a first reading and a second reading, it's required, so that was going to be a question.
And then the handbook discussion that tackles all of these issues will be presented to the board second meeting in July for first reading. Our entire staff, other than administrators, left today for the summer. They're not coming back to work on this. Anything that happens over the summer is going to come across as a directive from either the board or from the administration, because there isn't going to be any work that happens from that stakeholder group over the summer.
So how can you say that? I mean, because we're making a request. If the board is willing to put in the effort and work, how can we be told as a board that that the administrators are simply not going to work on it?
That's not what I said.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
I'm talking about the teachers.
I'm sorry, I completely misunderstood. Sorry.
I'm not going to be asking teachers to come back and work on this over the summer, because first of all, we pay them for summer work, and it's their summer. None of them are thinking about working on a grading scale at this point, so anything you're going to have between now and then is going to be based on administrative.
But you're saying whatever we come up with would be seen as a directive.
Potentially, because you're not going to have everybody agree to the decision that's made. That's just the way it works.
I guess my opinion is that's the risk we have to take.
I understand that. That's why I'm just laying out the timeline. So go with the general policy for IKA, your first reading in July. All 4 schools are going to bring you their handbooks on the second meeting in July. That's going to lay us out. Ken can hash it out and make some decisions at that point. Don't wait what you see. And I have the notes as to what some of the things that you said that you like out of all of this information. Take that into consideration and put the handbooks together.
Because while you're putting that together, I'm just saying between now and July 23rd, we then could, if we need to hash things out based on handbooks, we have a month that we could meet 4 times a week.
We also have a starting point. So the policy that was, the draft policy that was presented does contain a mapping to like an ABC. So like we do have a starting point with what they wanted to do for this. So I know a lot of the other schools we look at, they have something similar in there. So I think we can at least use that added to the work we've done already to combine that.
I definitely recommend you take the grading scale out of the policy.
Absolutely, so I'm saying you take it out of the policy, but you have the foundation to start with the handbooks that they worked on already.
Which you've been doing, I believe has been.
The weighting is already being discussed, it's about documenting that, you know.
I get concerned about taking the grading out of policy, but we're still gonna have to address it.
That's it. I'm looking to get the policy off of it.
I mean,
Okay, so-
policy is simple.
Because then down the road, if for some reason people have concerns about whatever changes we make,
It doesn't have to get stuck.
you hear about those concerns, we're not going back to policy, we're going back to handbooks. Policy should be general, handbooks have the details.
Once a year.
Those both have to be approved by the board. So that's my suggestion, get the policy off the table. Go with the general policy, then we bring your handbooks to you the second meeting in July for first reading, have a discussion then. I know you talk about reaching out to school districts to get some information. Again, you have a skeleton crew in the summer that could provide that information. You're really surprised if someone says that it's.
Right.
There's challenges across the board, grading before, and that's why we're focused on.
If we went with this, do you feel like you haven't, I mean, you clearly are wanting detail. I'm hearing that loud and clear from everybody.
Yeah, and I mean, I have my own running list of complaints that I want to knock out. But I don't know if we, as a board or superintendent, has those documents. But I think it's important that everything we've heard over the course of the last 6 months or whatever, we've addressed them one way or another, whether people are happy with how we address them or unhappy. At least we can say we have that discussion. Weighting, consistency, and all those things we talked about.
We can go back to that first list. Remember when we did the round robin just with us, and then you have all the other stuff that came after.
I just want to make sure we don't miss it.
I also think we need to put this back on the agenda as a regular topic. As issues get raised and as we are looking to get it resolved in a very short period of time. In regards to Alma, do we have an implementation timeline for that?
Maybe next week.
And then, just to refresh my memory, Alma will give parents and students the ability to see like one overarching grade. It also has a
Middle and
variation
high.
for middle and high school. And then it also has more variation in it, correct, Barbara?
Well, you're looking at averages, so there's mathematical calculations in the student information system, so you're going to see a 3.2, 3.4, 3.7, 2.6. Those mathematically is being calculated in average. And it's very user-friendly, easy to see from the parent side. I think that's going to address some of the issues going on.
So the proposal is bring IKA general to the July 9th meeting for first reading. And at the second meeting, we will have handbooks. And then potentially, not the handbooks, but the handbooks would come for first reading.
The potential to approve the handbooks, final approval, first meeting in August, which is plenty of time to get the information out.
Thoughts? Sean's nodding. It's not up for action.
Oh, no, yeah, no, I think let's do it.
So, all right. Anything else? All right, next up are nominations, resignations. We don't have any resignations. So we have nominations which we can approve in public as long as there's nothing of a personnel nature.
Make a motion to accept the nominations as presented for BES school counselor, BES special education teacher, EMS, CES music teacher, BES elementary teacher, and BCBA behavior analyst.
Discussion. Okay, all those in favor of the motion as presented, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Public communication and correspondence. I'm gonna go to blue shirt first, because she had her hand up.
I will yield to Madame on that.
Okay. Madame?
ED2 changes. Belmont. Just wanted to explain a little bit about our competency. So I'm obviously a teacher. We wrote our competencies many, many years ago. Now we call them standards. But basically, we've been using them for years. We used them with the 100-point scale at the high school, and now we're using them with the 4-point scale. And they can be used, if you have a competency, you decide what grade needs to be given with a competency. No matter what, we are at the point where we need to look at all of those all over again. It's been years for a lot of people. And I think a big issue with the whole consistency thing is that many of us don't know how to grade with competencies on the scale that we're in or on any other scale. And it's not just knowing what the competencies are, not just knowing what the standards are. When we started doing this, the Spanish teacher and I, we spent entire summers redoing every one of our assessments, because you cannot just give the same assessments, and lots of people are still doing that because we have there's no one teaching you how to make an assessment to grade it with the 1 to 4 scale. I don't even know if we could bring in specialists, because the amount of work that we had to do that, every assessment had to be remade so that it included a 1 to 4 scale. It included, this is what you need to meet the standard, and then this part of the test, and it might not be at the end, it might be all within it, was things that we were above what we were expecting. So we had the system where 3 was meeting, 4 was exceeding, and now I think we might be changing that as well to not just meeting and exceeding, but having specific things that they have to be doing for a 3 and a 4, which has been very complicated for us to understand, especially as a French teacher. When I think about my French 1 students, they can just learn words. So for them to be competent is just learning vocabulary, which is not like higher order thinking, really. So the whole entire thing is very complicated. And no matter what our grading system is, teachers, we have a lot of work to do, and I don't even, each department's different. Some of us teach skills, some of us teach content. There's a lot that goes into this, and it's not like we can just take the system we have and fix it, because everybody's at a different place. And I don't know who could teach all of these different people, at different departments. We do one thing in language, and there's something else in social studies, and there's something else in math. So whatever you go with, we still have a lot of work to do. Teachers do.
Andrea Bezegai, Besegai from Belmont. Just a couple things I would like to address. Board Member Todd, one of the reaching out to different school districts, I do know Guilford also uses a 0 to 100 scale, and they do competency-based credits as well, so that would be a much more local school district for you to reach out to. I saw that on their website at one of the meetings. Different schools were being thrown around, and I went right on the website and looked for that. I would also like to address one of the comments made by Board Member Embry. Revision, and although I do not think it should be done ad nauseum, it's not unlimited retakes, but revision is part of life. When you are an automotive worker and you're working on the line, if you mess up those parts, your boss isn't going to be like, oh well, darn, messed up, let's move on. They're going to have you go back and do that. Making changes and fixing errors is a part of your natural life, and I don't think it's bad to teach that to the students. I don't think that they should do an assessment, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. That is not showing that they understand the material. There should be other things that go with that. Another piece that was mentioned very briefly tonight was the difference between formative assessments and summative assessments. Those formative assessments are that time to get the feedback from the teacher. It is what you are doing in the moment, on the go. It teaches the teacher, hey, I really need to fix this because these kids are missing that. And I do think formative grading has a place in this policy. I do not think everything should be summated. It's too high stake. Kids come in, you don't know what is happening at home. You don't know if they ate breakfast. You don't know if they are coming from a safe place. And those things affect these children when they're going to do their summative grades. So if you're basing your final grading on just summatives or on mainly summatives, you don't know where those kids are coming in that day. And that is something to really take into consideration. Finally, I would just like to leave you with a quote, knowing that you all have a lot of work on your plate, but the community is out. I am so incredibly proud of these children that have come out and spoken on their own behalf tonight. And I would just like to say to you, indecision and delays are the parents of failure. So please do what you can to make sure we do not fail our students anymore.
Christine Safar. So I agree with everything that was said and how there needs to be Safar.
Is it C or K?
Belmont or Belmont? Okay. It's okay. I agree with everything that's been said and the need for change because it's our children's future. I'm thankful that I have a high honors student that was in middle school and now in high school. But as a parent, it's anxious seeing her worried about college and what her GPA will be. She's been sitting in her room calculating her potential weighted honors grades as the conversation about weighted honors has been circulating in the schools prior to reaching us as parents. As a medical provider, this is scary to see the mental health that it's taken on the kids.
You mentioned the New Hampshire School Board and the comparing of different schools, which by the way, nice work. You did amazing on all of that research. I think it's just interesting how we aren't holding our kids to a higher standard to show that Belmont and Canterbury are great schools and they can succeed at a 4.0 GPA. I think parents do like the grading system because as a parent of somebody who has wonderful grades, I can easily say I like the grading system because my child is succeeding, but she's succeeding with great stress and uncertainty as well as the anxiety as discussed. Raymond was brought up multiple times tonight, and I think it's a great idea that you want to take the initiative to reach out to them. I sit on 2 other private school board for my other child, and we do connect with similar school boards of the similar sizes to discuss policy, and I think it's a great idea to see the similar issues that are occurring in that development and in those same areas. So I agree with that. I think it's a great positive nature.
Just in response, I forget who said it, maybe Randy or.
Can you say your name?
Oh, Vince Martino from Belmont.
Thank you.
It was Randy, as far as like, who makes these decisions? Are we qualified to make these decisions? Yes, absolutely. Like, these are the parents and the teachers of the kids who live in this school district. Who else is better qualified? And like, Mark has kids in this business. Like, who better qualified than him to speak to these issues? Like, and Sean was saying, like, we need to do something yesterday. And Jeff said the same thing. Like, I think it was great what Mark proposed about implementing something alongside of what's currently in place. That way you guys don't have to overhaul the entire system, in 3 months. But you could put a number grade on something. It's worked and it has worked. Everybody knows what it looks like because we've been doing it for the last 50, 60 years in this country. It's worked. If you assign something like that to the academic stuff, namely, one of the biggest issues we wanted to talk about was NJHS, because that is measured on that national 3.0 scale or the 4.0 scale. And if our standards aren't aligning with that, and you have kids that aren't eligible for NJHS, that doesn't make any sense when they're far beyond the national average to be in NJHS, which is 3.0. So just that specific issue alone, along with scholarships and all that other stuff, could be changed just by adding that scale alongside what already exists. So I think that is a great solution. And you guys are absolutely right. Do something now. And that is a great solution. I think you guys can do that.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Josh Hills, Canterbury. School I work at, yep, I'm gonna brag, it's a top 10 school in New Hampshire, literally year in, year out. We use a Carnegie system with competencies. It can be done, it has been done. We've been doing it for over 12 years. It's an easy map. It's an easy system to implement. It's an easy thing to show teachers how to utilize competencies with a Carnegie system. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And it's a very straightforward. It lines up with everything that happens with the directives from the state of New Hampshire, and it has worked. And it has worked really, really well. And I am open after session. I get access to a computer. I can show it to you on that screen.
So, I'm Tara Crowell. So just listening and hearing and learning all about this stuff and reading up on this and listening to all the research you did, Alice, that was great. Translating some of these grades, and I think it was talked about, because it is like a 3.0, 3.5, having those adjustments, like when we were talking about the Carnegie scale with the 75 to 89 and that being like one grade, and why should I try for an 89 when I can get a 75 and get the same grade? Well, I think translating that to like a 3.0 to a 3.25 to a 3.5, 3.75, if you use both scales, that's one way to solve that problem. And just the other thing that came to my mind was, Mr. Cherson, when you say, well, we're fixing the weighting, well, who is they in the communication? I guess I'm missing that piece as a parent. And I watch these school board meetings after when I can't be here because I'm usually working till late. So I watch them online. So I don't know who they is. So when we're talking about the communication piece, I think communication could be a little bit better about the they piece, like who's they? I don't know who they is. When you say they are fixing the weighting, they're working on that. Your office is working on that? Like who's making these decisions? Is my question. I don't know who they is.
We can't.
Yeah. So, okay. But anyway. Yeah. So, and then like maybe, and I was thinking about the communication piece, like a liaison to the school, to the, you know, is there a liaison from the schools, the high school, the elementary school, the middle school? Where is there a staff member that can be a liaison to the school board, to the, you know, like, maybe we should implement that. Or better communication. Is somebody communicating? It seems to me there should definitely be a line of communication between the schools, the school board, and Mr. Tercey's office. What's going on there? And this thing about reiteration of, I know when I look at this and the kids being able to, you know, get a 2.0 and then they have 2 weeks to reassess. I know it's part of this competency-based learning. I hate it. I hate it because I think it creates our kids. I know there is a place for it, right? But I think when you have a kid that chronically does this all the time, and believe me, my kid was one of them, and it drove me nutty, was that you can't do this in life. You can't retake the test over and over and over again. When you get a job, if you don't pass in your report on time and you continually pass in your report late, you're going to get fired. And I know I've heard from teachers that have told me, well, our kids are coming back to Belmont High School, and the one thing that these kids are saying is, I wasn't well prepared for college. I wasn't well prepared for meeting deadlines. That I had to get it done, and I had to get it done on time. They're coming back and saying, they didn't prepare me well for college because I don't get to do it over. No, you don't. You go to college, you got to pass it in on time, and your professor's giving you a big fat 0. So I don't care. You know, I know there are plenty of kids that have issues that maybe are not having their best day that day, and there is room for flexibility there among teachers. That's very apparent in a lot of cases, and I think teachers are allowed to have that discretion. But to be able to say they can keep passing in and reassessing every single assessment, I don't think is okay. It teaches our kids to be lazy. It teaches our kids that it's okay to be late all the time, and it's not. This is not okay in life. It's just not. It creates bad habits. I don't like it. And I know I have other people who have told me the same thing. We're supposed to be preparing these kids for the real world, not, you know, being late, passing things in late, and not getting things done on time. I'm done.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Katie Archer, Canterbury. So I know we keep saying it's like a 0 to 1 scale or a 1 to 4 scale, but I really feel like it's a 1 to 3 scale because 3 is meaning proficiency, so that means you're at grade level. So 4 is above and beyond. So I think it's labeled. I think really the problem comes down to the wording in the grading and what's a 3. So 3 to me sounds like it's 100. You've met the guidelines, you've met the expectations of that grade level. So I guess it comes down to what does it take to get 4, and that's above and beyond. So is that really, that's my concern, is with the 0 to 3 or 0 to 4. You had made a comment about the summative and the formative and like weighting things differently or having students that decided they didn't want to participate in certain things, certain assessments or certain assignments. It brings me back to like college where you have your homework is weighted a certain amount. Your exams are weighted 25% of your grade. So it's not just like everything is equally all average. You have certain things that are going to account for your grade a little bit more. Where the habits of work is probably included in that too. Whereas right now habits of work isn't affected into your grade. That's kind of my 2 cents, because I think you made a comment about summative and formative reports too, Randy, or assessments. And they're different assessments, and the kids are gonna do differently on them. And my boys do horribly on computer assessment because they can sit there and press buttons. They're gonna do that, I know.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
Here, Crowd of Belmont. So, hold on, I have a lot written down. I liked what Mark said about putting down a motion immediately and trying to get something passed. The issue I have that with is, for some of the honor students here, we took Algebra 1 in middle school, so we got the credits for those. But we actually, if you look on our report cards, I'm not sure if this will come in now that it's summertime, but we have no grades from our credits that we received in middle school for high school. Because when taking the Algebra 1 in middle school, I believe you get a credit, and you also get credits for languages, I believe, because they're on my report card. I'm not sure how that would work, and I don't think it's considered an honors class in middle school, Algebra 1, so it's not weighted, but you're not getting grades for that, you just get credit, so I'm not sure how that would translate over. I think a lot of this stuff has just been kind of reiterated throughout the meeting, but there's, the weighting system. I didn't hear about the weighting happening until I heard it from around school. None of the students knew that we were possibly gonna get better weighting until people started talking about it. There was no communication to the student body whatsoever. I've gone through the weekly emails that we get from our principal, and there's nothing sent out about what's happening with that. We just hear about that. So it's very unclear communication, and I think we just need to do something about this. I feel like there's just a lot of different options weighing, but I think everyone, including me, I'm gonna go home and look at some of this stuff and see what other options we have for grading systems. And I think everyone has to do their own part for this, including everyone who came here today to listen and to learn about this.
Thank you.
I'll just piggyback off of that, just to let you guys know, yeah, this is a very big show of the community coming out saying we're very unhappy. And then we expect you guys to fix it, because that's your job. And we're all gonna be talking to each other. And I just think of all the parents and kids who aren't here that would be here. And I think just over 20 people in this room probably translates to over 100 people at least who would be here if they could. So I think everybody should definitely connect. And it's really about the kids at the end of the day. So let's make sure they are taken care of.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
Edgar Rivera from Canterbury. I've tried my best not to speak in public, and due to people having their own opinions about it. But I continue to do these videos not for the students that are achieving the poor or high performers in school. I continue to do the videos for the majority of students who are struggling in middle school. Yes, I understand elementary is a whole new world for Canterbury and Belmont, but middle school and high school who are struggling at home and in school under the current grading system. You can't, if you can prove me incorrect in this math right here, the 1 through 4 makes your GPA lower, because all we do at the end is add it up and average it. So I don't know how can we justify that we give people GPAs from the school district that are way lower than everybody else. You can say that there's a profile, magical profile out there that's gonna let some admissions person in a school that has 40,000 applicants, and somehow they're gonna sit down and understand the little profile that modifies the GPA, because it's not. I'm here for these people that are struggling under the grading system that we have in the school district. We can sit here, and the true reality is that someone here has been very successful at taking this board out to the pasture like a farmer does a cow. Because it's been a year that this was brought up. It's been 5 years since it was implemented. It's been 10 years since it was passed to be put into the school district. We spent all this money, so now the students and teachers, instead of learning in school, they're focusing on the grading. Oh, how are we gonna do this? How are we gonna do that? At the last meeting where teachers giving their input, they're saying that their professional training is not about continuing to learn how to teach, but instead it's how we doing this assessment instead of how we grading. How about we give teachers the opportunity to continue to learn, to teach our students, and our students to learn instead of worrying about what's the worth of their work, because we continue to push this grading system that obviously a lot of school districts have gone into and left. And this mentality that we're gonna look at other school districts without knowing what is going on over there, just like what we can be presented by the administration that says, oh, we collectively brought this together to the board. But as teachers have said in the meetings, is that their concerns were dismissed. So what you're being presented is missing the fact that teachers have problems and they're being ignored. So here we go. We're about to end the meeting, but we will all know that the strategic planning is up for the board in the coming weeks. So this whole idea that the grading system is gonna get fixed or something magical is gonna happen in the next couple of weeks, if it hasn't happened in 10 years, how much longer are we gonna continue on this path? In the true reality, when we were doing the budget last year, someone brought up, the budget's going up. It's coming that people are not gonna approve the school budget. So we're gonna be facing cuts. Who's gonna get cut? The teachers. If we're losing teachers because of budget cuts, and there's a problem with the grading system because we continue to make little justifications that's been said over and over and over, okay, and not fix the problem, we're gonna have a bigger problem. And I understand a lot of people in that time are gonna look for retirement, or they're gonna look for a pathway out and let somebody else have to deal with the problems. But as a community, we're gonna be suffering. Look at the math. The math doesn't lie to you. You add up 0.5 increments, you get a lower GPA. How can we continue to do that? Now there's breadcrumbs being thrown out to the public. Oh, we're gonna give you weighted average for honors people, which I thought already was happening, which boggles my mind. Or another breadcrumb, oh, since we have so many people failing classes, we're gonna lower the standard to a 2. Which is just gonna shoot everybody to the bottom. And I understand not everybody's going to college, but we should give them the opportunity that they can get out of here, out of this town if they want to, and succeed somewhere else, because they will be judged by the GPA that they live with here. No one's gonna care that there was the word distinction next to the word diploma, or that you had a unique grading system in your school district. So as a board, can we represent the people that are not able to be here because they probably are working 3 jobs or busy with their lives? A lot of people probably didn't come because of the heat conditions, because they're thinking that it's going to be hot as heck in here. But does it really have to, somebody have to be present for people that we elect to look in our best interest? Let's be honest. We have the school budget coming up in August. We have the strategic planning that was brought up out of nowhere because couple of meetings ago, it was going to be pushed back. We're just going to remove the year from the plan and put it up on the website. But all of a sudden, it's an important thing that we got to do. Obviously, there won't be time for the whole grading system. So here we go. going down the road, please represent the community and don't fall behind the concepts of like, well, are you really qualified? Well, yeah, people are qualified because they're suffering. They're made to help the people is suffering. That's all.
Anyone else? Communication. I don't think we have anything on public.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion as presented, do so by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?